Hello and welcome to another episode of the Phoenix Wisdom Podcast. I am your host, Janet Sandberg. I'm a life coach, Reiki master, divine channel, and person who advocates for mental health and really wants everybody to just be living their best lives at all times. We all go through stuff, and it's important to talk about it, and that's why we're here. Today, we have a bit of a special episode and one that we have never done before, where I have two guests on, and they are both repeat guests. And Marie has disappeared from our visuals, but hopefully she will get back on, and we'll see her in a minute. So we are with
our points were so controversial that you brought us on here at the same time to fight it out. Is that what you're saying?
No, your points are so aligned that we are here because you are both experts in the field of military and veteran suicide and mental health. So I'm going to let you two explain what that means and how you're both experts. Garrett, why don't we start with you? And then Marie, you can introduce yourself.
Okay. I am sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
No problem. We're all here now. So Garret Biss, retired Marine Corps pilot, retired in 2015. Fortunately, unfortunately, however you choose to look at it, went through some severe mental health challenges. And through that process, got connected. I don't know, it was a catalyst for a lot of growth and new awareness. So that's why I say it depends on how you look at it. But through that process, began really to get connected with why so many veterans struggle the way that they do when they transition out of the military. You know, as a population, veterans are at least 200% greater risk for mental health challenges, addiction challenges, at least 57%, if not much higher, greater risk potential for suicide or suicidal ideations. So as I began to find my own way out of that darkness, I was always kind of looking back over my shoulder, like, what was that? Where did that come from? And why are so many other service members experiencing the same thing? Because it doesn't make sense. Like, how do you take some of America's like best and brightest that go forward and they demonstrate their potential and their capacity and their strength and their wisdom, and then how does this population have such challenges after military service? Was something I was always trying to figure out. And now I'm doing a lot of work to help veterans understand some of the struggles that they might go through. And then those that work with veterans to better understand it so they can support those that they either work with or the veterans that they love in their life.
Amazing. Amazing. Marie, what about you?
Hi. Yeah. So Garret, it's an honor to be here with you. I talked to you a little bit before, and it's awesome to learn kind of what you're doing. And it sounds like you have more of the clinical side, at least like statistics, and a little bit more knowledge than I do in that. So myself, I was a medic in the Army, a combat medic in the Army, and I ended up getting medically discharged after being there for about 5.5 years. I have dealt with a lot of trauma in my childhood as well, and I was very lost in addictions and alcoholism for a long time to try and cope with my childhood stuff as well as my military stuff. I got sober back in 2017, and as I got sober, I started this mental health and spiritual journey to find peace and joy and love and overcome resentments and anger and frustration. I have a lot of the experience of being in the mental health realm myself as a patient, and so I have been to the psych unit twice. Last year, I was in an intensive outpatient program for PTSD and food addiction while I was healing from, or it was right after I got out of a facility that I was in for 8 months for hip replacements, bilateral hip replacements. And while I was there, there was a lot of isolation, a lot of triggers that I processed through and realized that even though I was doing better than I have in the past, I still had a lot to work on. And I've also done multiple types of therapy, dialectic behavioral therapy, cognitive processing therapy, and acceptance and commitment therapy being the three main ones. When I got sober, I started writing mostly poetry about recovery from trauma and addictions. And over this last, we'll say about 6 months ago, I got the prompting to publish a book about my poetry. And in doing that, I started kind of podcasting as well. I've got another podcast, which is specifically for veterans as well. Janet, if you're okay, can I say a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure.
So it's called Every Day's a Saturday, USMC Veteran, and Garret has actually been a guest on that last year.
Awesome.
And I did an episode with him, which was my first podcast experience. And in that, I became a co-host with him. And we have done multiple episodes just kind of delving more deep into my story and his story. And in the next week, we will be starting to actually have other guests come in as I'm co-hosting, and we are going to be interviewing other veterans a little bit about their story, but mostly how they are going from PTSD to advocacy, what they are doing to heal out loud, how they are healing, how they are encouraging other people to heal, as well as we'll be interviewing people who are also working with veterans and advocating for veterans who are not veterans. And so in that realm, it's mostly about veterans. Along with this, I am also working with a business partner to develop a community. It's going to be called Slider Babe. Slider is my maiden name. I was the baby of my family. It was just a name that I created a long time ago. So it's going to be Slider Babe, and it's creatively healing out loud through community. And so with that, it will be, there'll be just a community, networking and stuff to encourage other people to heal out loud, how they are healing out loud. The tools that I've used and they've used will be supporting each other, just kind of sharing how we're doing this stuff to be able to encourage other people to use creativity and community, podcasting, or whatever that may be, to help them heal out loud as well. And along with all of this stuff, I am also working on a few more books, children's books, and some essays, and a ton of other writing. So that's
Beautiful.
kind of where I'm going at the moment.
All right.
You got that publisher bug. Once you publish one, then it's like, now I know how to do it, and I want to do one on this and on this and on this.
Yeah.
And then also, as I'm doing all of this stuff, I was calling myself an unofficial peer support, but Garret kind of helped me to recognize, to name myself something a little bit more welcoming. And so I am starting to brand myself as a recovery advocate. And so people,
Love
veterans or non-veterans, anybody who's got struggles with trauma or addictions, if they need someone to talk to, they'll come to me, and I'll kind of share the resources that I've developed and compiled to kind of help them to get to a better place. So I appreciate that, Garret, because that has made a difference in my own mindset, because I was kind of cutting myself down. And so I'm definitely feeling a little bit more confident at saying that I'm a recovery advocate, and it's an honor to kind of be doing that alongside, you guys, because that's what you guys do too. So I'm glad to be here.
Awesome.
It's an honor to be here with you.
Thank you.
So it was interesting, Marie, when you were talking, you brought up very briefly that you had your own childhood trauma. And I don't know if either of you have the answer to this, but you were both in the military and, met a lot of people. Is there a higher percentage of people who had trauma who end up in the military? And does that contribute to the mental health struggles that, they kind of get the double whammy of their own stuff plus the military stuff in the end? Do you know?
Yeah, it's a great question.
Go ahead.
No, I saw one. I'll try to pull up the statistic, but I think it's about twice as much. So the common terminology that we always talk about, childhood trauma, ACEs, so adverse childhood experiences. And this is measured on a scale of 0 to 10. And what they found is the higher score that you have, then the more traumatic experiences or potentially traumatic experiences. And what they showed is a population of veterans on average that has an ACE score of 4 or more is more than twice that of the regular population. So yes, there is a correlation there. And then if we kind of think about why, or what I find, and this is really my whole TEDx talk is about, and really the model that I use, or the lens that I look at all of human experiences through, this lens of connection, authenticity, and meaning. I think these are our 3 fundamental human needs that we have beyond our needs for food, water, and shelter. And it's connection, authenticity, and meaning that creates our foundation for our mental and emotional well-being. So military service is certainly a way that humans experience extreme levels of connection, a deep sense of authenticity or permission to be authentic, and a very profound sense of meaning. So whether it's intentionally or whether there just seems to be something about the draw of that, this allure of being part of something that's greater than yourself and having that sense of camaraderie and connection, I don't think that there is, service aged or service member aged recruits that are necessarily thinking of that, but somewhere in them, they realize that, like, hey, this environment or these experiences that I've had in the past are not great, and I need to try to make an exit. I mean, I had guys that I served with in boot camp that they were just exhilarated that they had 3 meals a day and that they knew what bed they were going to be sleeping in. So, I mean, that's an extreme example, but yeah, I think everywhere and in between.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't have all the statistics, and I'm glad that Garrett, you do. For myself, I know most of the people that I served with came from some sort of trauma. Most of the people, everybody has their own story, but there was a lot of people with the mental instability that, like Garrett said, we were looking for something that was beyond what we had. I know for myself personally, I never felt really connected because I came from foster care and adoption and dealt with some abuses and whatnot. And I never felt truly connected. And I never felt connected to the life that I was living because I was a chameleon. I was a people pleaser. I was doing whatever everybody else wanted me to do. And I also was lost in those drugs and alcohol. And so I did not have a life of my own. And so me joining the military was a way for me to take back my life. Was for me, because I'd never felt like I had it in the first place. So it was a way for me to finally get control of something in my life. This is something I'm choosing to do. And as I was talking to my co-host on the other podcast, we both had that, like he explained it, and I felt that we both had that feeling that when we graduated our training, it was the first time that it was our victory. Like when I graduated, it was something I did on my own. It wasn't something that I did for my parents or did for anybody else. It wasn't anything that anybody else did for me. It was something that I did, which gave me back that power. So I know that's what it was like for me. And most of the people I talked to kind of went through the same thing.
Right. Yeah. So that it makes a lot of sense, both perspectives that, we're joining the military because we've been through a lot of stuff. We want something that's our own, but also we're looking to be a part of something bigger and have that purpose and meaning. And then, yeah, it compounds. And then, like we talked about, Garrett, when you were on the show, the whole transition back to civilian life. And especially if you've had a very traumatic civilian life, before you joined, and then you're in the Army, and then, like, what do you go back to? Like, that makes it even more complicated because you're totally changed from who you were before you joined, especially coming from a traumatic childhood. You're obviously not going back to that same trauma and family situation or whatever it was. Now you're not only losing, that identity of being a part of that something, but you're also, like, creating a life from scratch.
Right. Yeah, in many ways. And so a lot of that connection, authenticity, and meaning that somebody might get from the service, we also got to look at it in the age or the time in their life that they experience that. I mean, this is the time when we're still becoming adults, where prefrontal cortex is still forming. So really our
Mm-hmm.
whole foundation for values and beliefs and understanding of our place in the world is all being developed at that time when we're in uniform. And regardless of what somebody experienced, either in the military service, as far as traumatic experiences, or even in their life before that, that abrupt change and this loss of the way that you've met for these basic needs.
Oh.
All right, I'm back.
Technology.
Technology
So
today is great. Yeah, you were saying something about the loss of their basic needs.
Yeah. And then what I said when I cut out, it was so profound. I don't know if I can even say it again. So it's lost forever. No, just saying, like, regardless of what somebody experienced beforehand, and I will point out, like, yes, statistics are funny. It's the way that you present them. It's going to make it seem like whatever you want. So yes, 24% of people that enter the military have an ACE score of 4 or more, but that's still, most people don't. I mean, that's still almost 80% of people that don't. So yeah, there is a higher percentage, but there's a lot of people that don't kind of have that background. And I don't know where they picked the arbitrary number 4 as the cutoff for that study. But there's a lot of things. And if so, let's just say somebody did come from a troubled background and they never really felt safe or seen or heard or valued or enough because of whatever they experienced. Then they go find that for the first time in the military at the time that their prefrontal cortex is developing, as their sense of self is developing. And then that's taken away, regardless of how healthy or unhealthy your childhood was up till the time you joined the service. You still just lost something that is profound and that you need for your mental and emotional well-being.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of touch on that. That was one of the hardest things for me. When I got out of the military, it was like, so I started getting medically discharged. I started having issues with my hips while I was deployed. And I was grounded to the fob my last 4 months. And when I got out, they're like, hey, we're medically discharging you. It took me 1.5 years to medically discharge. While I'm doing that, I'm working with the brigade, so the higher ups, to get the unit ready to deploy again. And so I'm doing all of their medical readiness stuff and getting ready to say goodbye to most of my friends. So all these people that I deployed with and I was alongside that first deployment, they're all getting ready to go. And here I am, getting out of the military. And so there was a lot of survivor's guilt. There was a lot of frustration. There was a lot of insecurities. And so when I got out, I had one friend that got out around the same time as me, but everybody else has gone and deployed. So I felt like I completely abandoned everybody that I knew. But then also when you get out, there's no follow-up. There is no follow-up. They don't say, hey, you just got out, come hang out with us, come party with us, or come check in with us. They don't do that. It's you have to get connected with the VA. And I was super blessed because I got a medical discharge, so I automatically had this ability and was already connected. And I am very much proactive in my own way of receiving help. And so I was able to reach out to the VA, get connected. But most of my battle buddies, when they got out, they did not have any sort of connection with the VA. They didn't have their disability. They just felt completely lost. And so I felt lost because all of my guys were gone and then there was no follow-up. And then I tried to meld back into the dynamic that I had at home. I moved back home and I tried to meld in, but there was some unhealthy mindsets that I had regarding the family, and I sacrificed myself a lot and melded into this dynamic that I wasn't comfortable with, which I was already feeling insecure because my body gave out on me. I was feeling insecure because I lost all of my battle buddies. I was feeling insecure because the only way I knew how to socialize was alcohol usually, and so my alcoholism got even worse. And it took me a long time to when I finally got sober was when I could finally, it actually has been just really the last year that I was able to kind of change my mindset with a lot of the unhealthy dynamics that I had, with my family, and being able to kind of separate things. But that's hard to do because, like you said, we started out with not everybody, but we started out with whatever dynamics that we had before, and then we go into, oh, we've got this family, we've got this camaraderie, and then we get out and it's just gone. And then you either go back to what you used to know, or so many other people just get left on their butt because they just didn't have anything. And I have many of the people that I was in the military with who, like this topic on veteran suicide, right? I had so many people, that I have lost through suicide, or who have been in jail, or who got lost in addictions because they came out of the military, whether they had childhood stuff or not. They came out of the military and they did not know what to do, and they didn't feel connection, they didn't feel love, they didn't feel safety. There was no safety net at all. And so the only way out was addictions, addictions or illegal activities, or killing themselves. And it's been interesting.
So one of the reasons that I wanted to have you back on is that this topic is also close to me. My stepson was in the Army and got out. His wife is still in. So, it's and I've watched him go through some of this stuff, and he's also very good at getting the support that he needs and stuff like that. But if you don't know anybody in the military, like, this topic just is harder to relate to. And I didn't understand, how messed up it all is, really. But also, so we've been talking about the transition when you leave the military and how difficult that is. But also, I know there's also a lot of suicide in the military for active members. Like, happened to my stepson. One of his I don't, terminology is not my strong suit here, but one of the guys in his barracks took his own life while they were, pretty new within the first year or two of being there. And, that hits a lot as well. And so it's not just an after thing, it's also a during thing.
When I was in Iraq, we had somebody that killed themselves. Only one that I know of. I'm sure that there was many others. My husband, he was a Marine, and when he was in, he saw a suicide when he was in training, and then a friend of his also. So yeah, it is something that is pretty prevalent inside as well.
Do you know why?
Loss of hope and an inability to process something that's traumatic. So when I think of trauma, I think of it in really kind of a broad or a general definition. And I guess before I share this, I should clarify that I'm not a licensed mental health provider or a clinician, but I talk to a lot of them and I've sat with a lot of them. But with that said, I think one of the things, really what I try to do is I try to take what I've learned and, like, okay, how do I speaking to, how do I dumb that down for everybody to understand? First, how do I dumb it down so I can understand? Like, how do I find, like, metaphors or analogies? So, talking about things that are, very kind of complex topics, trauma and addiction, you could ask 100 people what trauma and addiction are, and you'll get at least 100 different answers about each. I understand any event or circumstance that creates a fundamental shift in one's values, beliefs, or understanding of the world and their place in it to be something that's potentially traumatic. It's the change, it's the alteration of a value or a belief. And this could be something that we think of like an individual involved in a car accident and they lose the life of a loved one that they were traveling with. For this individual, they lived a whole life where they thought generally, they had this foundational belief that you could get in a vehicle, you could drive around, go to the store, go on vacation. You didn't have to worry about, somebody's life ending in the moment. Well, now they realize after that moment that that's not the world that they live in, that one of these values or these beliefs that they had has actually been proven false, which creates a disorientation in many ways of like, crap, there's this one thing that was just proven false. I've got this whole plate or this whole foundation of beliefs and values. Like, what else is wrong? Like, what else have I misperceived in my life? So I think that disorientation is a big challenge. But I also love this kind of definition or understanding of trauma because it helps us see that trauma can be seemingly benign or insignificant, even in our own eyes, as we look back at events that have happened in our life. And if we think that trauma is only, murders, assaults, rapes, and, and violent crimes, those can be traumatic, but so many other things that might be seemingly benign. I mean, I had one experience when I was a child where I had a bodily need that had to happen, and somebody wasn't there for me to take care of me. So I ended up, having an accident. But I recall this one experience and realized that in some ways that could be seen as something that was traumatic, because as a young child, I had this belief that those people that are around you, you can generally trust them to care for you, to help you take care of your basic needs. And then in this moment, somebody didn't show up. So maybe that's maybe we get violated by a friend at some point, or we get, this sense of rejection, or we get assaulted, we get abused. And there's this fundamental belief that shifts. It's that shift of beliefs or values or understanding of yourself that is indicative that a trauma occurred. So that was a long rabbit hole to go down, but anybody who has a certain foundation of values, beliefs, and understanding of who they are and their place in the world that has an experience that alters that can be traumatic. And if the trauma leads to self-doubt, to shame, a lot of times we talk about the implications of trauma in the negative context, whether it's post-traumatic stress or PTSD. And these usually show up when we have a value that was proven, or an estimate of ourself that was proven to be greater than what we once thought. So maybe we experience something and realize that I had in my mind that I could operate at a certain level, or I could deal with certain adversity and I'd be okay. And then this experience just proved to me that that's not okay. Or I always thought that I would do the right thing if I was presented a situation, and then this experience occurred and I didn't do the right thing. So now my whole fabric and sense of self has just been torn. And that, and then the implications of that more often lead to guilt, lead to shame, lead to an erosion of sense of self-worth. And if you get to the place where you have an internal pain because you're kind of contending with this disorientation, and you also have something that is taking away your sense of self-worth, or you have this fear, as we talked about, a lot of veterans don't understand why they're in the pain and suffering after they transition. If you ever find yourself experiencing suffering and you don't know where it came from, then it can be hard to have hope that things could get better. So, so now let's take an arbitrary or like a hypothetical person that joined the military. Maybe they had this certain vision of themselves that they'd be able to do certain things and survive certain things. And then something happens that proves that wasn't right. Or maybe that because of the pressure of basic training, a lot of people try to, take their own lives or run away during basic training. Maybe they realize that, when called to the plate, they're not operating the way that they thought. So now their whole fabric of their understanding of self is kind of evaporated. Or they find like this internal pain or this guilt, or, maybe they left something at home, they left a responsibility, and now they're feeling guilty about that they're not there. I mean, it could be a litany of different ideas, but I think it all stems back to this loss of foundation for who they were or what they thought of themselves in the world, and some kind of internal pain that they don't have hope that it's gonna change or get better. And this is one parallel that I see between both suicidal ideations or acts, and and addiction. A lot of maybe people that haven't experienced it or really thought about it, they think that like, oh, this is a temporary act or solution to, that creates a permanent problem, or the addiction. But really, if you get in the mind of somebody who's like at that crossroads and in that place, whether they decide self-harm or they decide to indulge in this substance or behavior, the thought is never about what's coming tomorrow. The thought's only about like, you're in such a survival state at that moment that you're trying to do anything that you can do to get out of pain. So your thought is not like, what are going to be the consequences of this tomorrow or next month? It's like, I've exceeded my capacity to deal with this pain. I've lost hope that it's going to get better, at least better very, very quickly. And I can no longer carry this weight. So I can either numb all emotions and escape emotionally, or I can escape physically and ultimately get out of this pain. I'll say it's similar if you were in a bedroom closet and all of a sudden the house was on fire and you had a loved one standing in front, in the doorway between the closet that's on fire and you getting to safety. in that moment, you're just trying to survive. You'll bulldoze them, even if you hurt them or, injure that person. Like, you're going to do what you need to do to survive. You're not thinking about, the consequences of, of those actions in the moment. You just want to be around the next moment to move forward. So that was a very long journey that we took to explain why there can be high rates of suicide, even on active duty.
I appreciate that, Garrett. And you got me thinking about my own journey, right? So for me, I did not realize how suicidal I was. And I spoke about this last time I was here. I did not realize how suicidal I was until I got sober. And the thing is I hid my suicidal ideation because every time I felt suicidal, I would drink or do drugs. And so that was my solution. And in my sobriety, that's when I got super suicidal, knowing it, because I no longer had the solution that I was using before. And I had to develop a new solution, which was my higher power and recovery and, finding joy and gratitude and mindfulness, but back then I didn't know how suicidal I was. But I agree with a lot of the stuff that you're saying. It was like, so many fundamental things were going on in my brain. And if you guys will indulge me, I want to read a poem that I wrote, just kind of going into this mindset that I had before I got sober, before I started finding the new solution. And so it's actually called My Reality. And it just goes into what my brain was thinking. So in an alternate reality, and I wrote this about 6 months sober. And so this is when I started really realizing where my mindset was. And this helped me see and kind of understand, since I've been sober, as when I found out that more people that I deployed with have killed themselves than died during the deployment that I was with them. We've lost so many people. And when I started writing this is when I started realizing, a lot of them were probably having the same thing, but they didn't find the solution that I have found. And so anyway, so it's called My Reality. In an alternate reality of days long past stood a broken little girl in a rock hard cast. No one really loved her. That was what she thought. In her mind, she was abandoned, left alone to rot. People all around her would pick on her or tease. Taking it all personal, she told her heart to freeze. Her pain grew even deeper when someone took advantage, so she knew she had to run. Her emotions she must manage. The beginning was to fake a smile in every situation, becoming a chameleon so she could prove her station. Next were the addictions, manipulating, lying. Before she even realized it, no longer was she trying. It became a way of life, no effort left at all. To run or drink her life away was her only call. Going through the motions, not letting others in, she felt that to pretend was the only way to win. She saw glimmers here and there, but never finding peace, running to wrong places to try to get release. The people she kept close she loved as best she could. Most were lost just like her, clinging to falsehood. The ruin this was causing never crossed her mind. Her worth she had been walking on, so hope was hard to find. It took her long to realize her perspectives were all wrong. She was worthy of true love. She had been all along. Before I continue on the last half, so that was kind of like the first, that was my old reality. And there's so many people that get stuck in that mindset. There's no way out. I'm a victim. And when you are living in the mindset, because most of the people who do commit suicide, at least in my experience, have had the traumas before or never processed through the stuff in the military. And so when you are stuck in this mindset of negativity, if that is your everyday life, then a lot of times it takes just one little drop. And it could be something so seemingly tiny and insignificant, but that simple drop is what pushes people over the edge. And so like for me, I was living in all of this and I was stuck. And if I would have gotten one more drop, I probably would have killed myself. But God had other plans for me and I found my sobriety, right? And so then this is my new mindset, in coming in and one that I as people are watching this, I hope you can adopt this new mindset. Please know that you're not alone. Like, don't get stuck in that alternate reality, because this is a reality that you can have. And so with this simple knowledge, lines were surely shifted. The weights of old reality were slowly being lifted. The past provided lessons for healing to occur. She learned to focus on today, for the future was a blur. Now, in the strange new realm unfolding every day, stands a hopeful little girl, discovering her way. Vulnerable and open to learn humility, willing to make progress towards the day she's free. She fights a daily battle forgiveness to attain, for from her past reality, resentments do remain. She has to snuff the urges of building up more walls, especially when she feels she's had too many falls. She only knows the next right step is opening her heart to that holy power. He'll outline her part. He's watched her all along, providing her protection. She no longer tries to run from that connection. She does not thrive in chaos or causing a commotion. She can stand her ground, not hiding from emotion. The unknown, though a mystery, no longer is so scary. If the present is unpleasant, she knows it's temporary. She gets up if she falls and holds her head up high. She knows that it's okay if she needs to cry. Continuing this daily, her past no longer binds, and on anxieties of tomorrow, she can lower blinds. Not knowing what the future brings is but a tiny cost. The blessing of uncertainty, she is no longer lost.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us. And it's just such a reminder that, when we're in it and feeling everything and it's so overwhelming, and, like Garret said, we're just trying to get out of the burning closet and doing whatever we can. It's so hard to have that little voice that says, this is just temporary. It'll end. It's not going to be this way every day, all the time, for the rest of our lives. And that's the hard part, is knowing that it's temporary. And that's part of why we're here today, is to share that message that, yeah, it sucks and you're going through hell, but it is temporary and it will get better. And
that's what can be so hard to see is, like when you're in that survival state, you really get kind of tunnel vision, and now you're in that fight or flight mode, and all you're doing is looking for the next potential threat or the next potential downfall. So even though you could have all this evidence around you that things can be okay and things will get better, all these things that other people can see for you that you can't see for yourself, because you're just in that survival state, and the only thing you're looking for is the next threat or potential, thing that might harm you. Well, if that's the only thing that you're focusing on, then it seems like that's everything. So it's like everywhere I look, that's all I can see, because we're filtering out anything that's not a threat, because we don't have to solve an opportunity. We don't have to solve something, and when you're in that place. So fortunately, and having that shift and being able to shift that mindset, this comes back to that really kind of overarching definition of trauma. And why I said we often talk about the PTS or PTSD, but really what you experienced there as that shift, that was also traumatic. We don't talk enough about traumatic in the good light, and trauma's ability to lead us towards post-traumatic growth. But whatever that shift was that happened for you, there was a shift in value, belief, or understanding of the world or your place in it. And it was one that you were able to capitalize or leverage to get to a better place. You had this belief that, like, everything's wrong about me, everything's wrong around me, everything's trying to take me out, I don't deserve anything. And then just shifting one of those tiles of beliefs and allowing a little bit of kind of light to come in was enough to be a catalyst to allow the rest of the growth to happen. And that's what we talk about when we're exploring post-traumatic growth. It's how can we grow and how can things get better, not despite the challenges or despite the place that we were stuck in, but actually because of it in many ways.
So I was just thinking, like, I love that you were talking about that kind of stuff in all of these different layers of therapies that I've done. So the psych unit, the first time, that was when I was finally able to, like, let go a lot of stuff and challenge some of the fundamental feelings I had towards the military, right? And I had that shift. And then I did the dialectic behavioral therapy, which fundamentally changed everything that I thought about how I was talking to myself, interpersonal relationships, how I was talking to other people, right? And then that dialectic or cognitive processing therapy, where it was the really deep, intense, fundamental changes of the lies that I had been telling myself for so long and identifying where those lies come from. That led me to the psych unit the second time, right? Because I was processing through all of these things.
Yeah.
And then this last time last year, when I did the intensive outpatient program, that was another completely and utter fundamental shift, because I had to address some of the PTSD that I hadn't addressed. I had to address, my expectations of relationships as a married woman, and going in sobriety, which had never happened, and fundamentally all of these expectations. And it's still a daily battle to shake those fundamental expectations. I just had an issue today where it's like, I have these expectations, they're not being fulfilled, and I get really upset and emotional, but it literally is that it's that core beliefs that started as a childhood that I have had to completely and utterly change. And they manipulate and they change themselves to try and merge into deeper crevices of your brain as you challenge them. And so the one thing that I will put out there is, there's many people, who are probably listening to this, that they're like, yeah, I did therapy before, I'm fine. No, you're not. No. like one time through is never enough, because everything changes and moves. And as your fundamental beliefs change, the negativity, the addictions, whatever it is, evil, whatever you want to call it, it will corrupt things in such different ways and minute ways. And so it's like, there's so many, when they talk about the onion, it is completely and utterly true. Like, you will never get to the middle of the flippin' onion, because it just keeps growing. It's an onion that you're eating as it's growing. And so it's just constantly, you've got to go through all of these different layers. So if you've been through therapy and you're struggling, you're like, well, I did therapy, I should be fine. No, this onion is growing. So go back. Even if you feel like you're doing good, make sure that you have some sort of support group or therapy. Either way, both, all of the above. I've got the veteran support group. I've got my church. I've got my recovery, from my addictions. I've got my online groups and stuff like that. I've got so many layers of people that are helping me through these layers of things. Like, don't try to do it on your own, and don't feel bad that it keeps coming back, because it's not the same. You are never the same person. Every day you are a different person. And so every day the layer is different. It doesn't matter how much you talk about your stuff. So yeah, so I don't know. Anyways, so it's just in my brain to just say, do not feel bad if you feel like you're down that same path, because you're not. You're looking at it like this, and it's a circle, but it's really like this. It's a spiral that's going down, right? That was the best visual presentation of mental health stuff that I have seen before. You're looking like this, but it's going like this. And so it is getting smaller, but it's growing, and so it'll keep getting smaller. So anyways, like, don't give up if you feel like you are being challenged in these fundamental ways, because this kind of work literally is changing the fundamental being that you thought you were. And I have had to mourn in so many ways who I thought I was and who I thought I was going to be,
Yes.
And so it's been an interesting challenge in that. But yes, completely and utterly post-traumatic growth. And I love that. By the way, Garrett, I brought it up with my co-host, and he loves that as well. But that wording is fantastic. Post-traumatic growth. Post-traumatic stress did not happen just overnight. There is lots of layers that happen with it. And the growth is the same thing, lots of layers. And as you're processing through the PTSD, you have to recognize that there is going to be the layers of growth too. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's an important thing to note, is that it's not mutually exclusive. You can and will have growth at the same time you're still working through some of the symptoms and some of the challenges from the post-traumatic stress. It's not like you either get all or none. It's just, I think it's sad, I think, in our society, in our culture, in the industry, that we don't talk more about post-traumatic growth, because this is a thing that's going to happen and co-occur with with the PTSD or the PTS. And it's like, this is like a, I don't know, it's a balloon going up. It's a lifeline going up. Let's not just deal with all the stuff that's holding us down, but if we're going to work through that and we want to continue to work through that, let's prop ourselves up and recognize and leverage some of the growth that's taking place. And you talk about things shifting and changing all the time and having to, it's like there's the downward spiral that we go down, and then the upward spiral that we can, climb up. And yeah, every time you're going to come back around to like the 12 o'clock position, even as you're spiraling up, you're going to be a new version of yourself, a different situation. But then there might be that same thing that kind of like triggers or makes you feel like you're pulled all the way back down. One way that I envision it, which kind of helps me, I mean, again, these are just completely kind of made up analogies and metaphors, but if I can have a visual kind of representation or a conceptual representation of what's going on, I don't know, it's easier for me to digest. So what I understand is that, all of the beliefs and the values that we have, at the end of the day, their number one intent is to protect us. So even when we're experiencing traumas and harms when we're a child and we're growing up, if we come to a conclusion that like, hey, I'm just not that important, or I'm not worthy of being seen and loved, that's not just a self-deprecating thought or seed that gets planted in us. There's a part of us that holds on to that, because if I can live my life from this knowing that I'm not lovable and acceptable, then I can avoid potential threats as I navigate around. I won't overly rely on other people. I won't connect with other people. I won't divulge certain things. So I don't see it, and it, of course, the consequences that we deal with are hurtful and create pain, but I don't see the root of it as, from this perspective that our experiences are done to kind of hurt us, or our ego or our beliefs are done in a way to try to limit us. If we can see them as a way of trying to protect us, then it also helps me understand why we have to continue to come back. So if we have this, we'll use a military reference. If we have this, this phalanx or this like army that's there to protect us, our survival and our well-being, and we're doing some therapy and some work, and we try this modality and it kind of defeats this limiting belief that we have, or this self-deprecating thought, or this value limitation that we have, they're not going to give up. Like, they still want to protect us. They still have a mission to protect us. So they're going to go regroup, and they're going to come over here, and they're going to try to protect us, the next time that there's an opportunity. And again, it's not just to hold us back, or that's not the reason, is to like hurt us, but the reason is to protect us. And unfortunately, as we have these experiences, especially in adolescence, where we do develop this belief that's not true, even though it might be intended to protect us, but it's not true, it will create cascading negative effects for the rest of our life if we continue to live our life based on this belief that I'm not good enough, that I can't trust people, that I'm not deserving of happiness. And then, until we get to the root of that and really kind of rewire the way that we see things, or the lenses through which we look at the world, it's going to be a continuous evolution. I almost said battle, but I would rather say evolution, because there's opportunity for more growth and more positive change.
Absolutely. We are always evolving and growing. And sometimes it doesn't feel good. We always think of growth as a positive thing, which it is, but it's not always easy, and it can be hard work, and it can, make us feel things that we don't necessarily want to feel, but we're still on a positive trajectory.
Yeah.
So
would you guys,
I would say that there's no growth and no benefit that we experience in our life that doesn't come from some kind of at least discomfort, if not severe pain. I mean, we want to be physically healthy. It's not the most comfortable thing to go and exercise all the time. We want to be wiser or more mentally healthy. It's not easy to, spend all-nighters in college or in high school, like studying things so that we can grow. So I'd challenge to find any kind of example of some way that we evolve or become better or grow or get anything good in our life that doesn't come with some kind of at least mild discomfort, if not kind of severe pain.
100%.
Would you guys bear with me as I read another poem? As you're talking, I'm just this poem. I wrote it down because I'm like, it's one that I'm hoping that I could squeeze in. And
All
it's
right.
actually called The Power of Thoughts.
Okay.
And so this one is that idea of how just what's going on in our head, how powerful that is, right? So thoughts are more powerful than 1,000-pound weight. They can push and pull inside you, change your focus from love to hate. They can chain you down to the bed where you rest. They can definitely guilt you for not being good, better, best. They can contort the way all faces appear, especially the one looking back from the mirror. They can make you assume the world would be best if you can just stop breathing with the rest. They can make you see that darkness is better and there's no point at all to be a goal setter. Don't fret. The solution from all of this madness is just changing those thoughts from pain to gladness. You see, thoughts are more powerful than 1,000,000-pound weight. They can lift you up higher than this mortal state. They can open your eyes to a paradise of love filled with a light as bright as the sun up above. They can fill your heart with the connection we share with nature, each other, all things, everywhere. They can contort the pain in everyone's faces to become a gratitude at having been to those places. They can remind us of old pains and fears so we can be supportive and help others shed tears. Again, thoughts are more powerful than anything you can imagine. They actually control the heaven or hell you're living in. So I ask you today to go into your mind, alone or with help, go deeply to find the motivation to change your thoughts point of view from pain, anger, sadness, or anything askew, and turn it towards hope, love, faith, and peace, and you will find in the end an eternal release.
Love it. And I think that is the perfect note for us to end off today. Thank you both so much for being here again. This has been great. There will be links and resources and everything in the comments, the descriptions to all the stuff that Marie and Garret have talked about today. And
I'm also
as
going to,
always,
I'm also going to add a whole lot of resources for people for mental health support or just for recovery programs, support programs, suicide awareness and prevention programs. So I'll add that as well as some links to some clinical information.
Yes. Perfect. Amazing. Thank you again. I appreciate you both and all of the work that you are doing out there for our veterans and active military members and, us regular civilians too. Keep it up and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Janet.
you so much. It was great to be here.
Thank you for listening. Remember that you are loved, you are worthy, you are valuable, you are meant for more, and that it really does get better. If you are in crisis, there are numbers that you can call or text to get the help that you need. That information for Canada and the US is in the description below each episode. If you are in immediate crisis, please call 911. We love you, and I hope you'll listen again.